This analysis is jam-packed with questions answered like what happened to Jeryline after the battle at the Mission Inn, along with taking a deep dive into the many biblical references made in the book and movie, as well as the timeline from the first demon night to Jeryline's timeline based on the book. So let's go ahead and get started.
The mind is willing, setting my feet, lest I be slipping. Wanna be free, wanna be free.
I was up for the task that he handed. Promised he wouldn't regret it. I'm holding it down to the casket. I'm holding it down like a bandit.
I'm African, and ain't nobody with my sort of vision.
Everything that kills me makes me feel alive.
Well, it was just a dream, just a moment ago. Cause I was up so high, looking down at the sky. Don't let me fall.
Chosen people hate what the world seeks and seeks what the world avoids. These are beautiful words from Ignatius Loyola.
My intentions for creating this video is to connect it to spiritual and conscious concepts, but mostly religious concepts as well. Sticking to my video analysis mantra, if you will, of how the whole is different from the sum of its parts. This spiritual, conscious, and or religious analysis is to help you look deeper at what's being presented. I'm using the intricate details of this movie to describe the teachings of consciousness and spirituality, and lastly to emphasize certain points. So if you're ready, let's begin. Chosen one, rite of passage, golden ticket, passing the test, and passing the baton. Now, normally when I do these movie analysis, I give a synopsis of the video by retelling the movie. Then I talk about my key points and or the symbolism I find within each movie. For this movie, I want to tell it in a different way by going over the timeline of the demon nights. I'm going to call this order the first demon night, and then I'll continue on with the sequential order of every other demon night thereafter.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. But the darkness wasn't empty. It was full of creatures, full of demons. And they had 7 keys formed into a circle that focused the power of the cosmos into their hands until God stepped forth and said, "Let there be light." And there was light. He scattered the demons. And he scattered the keys all across the universe. Now we fast forward about 2 or 3 million millennia. Now the demons are back. They got 6 of the keys. And one day they find the 7th key here on earth. Now to save it, God filled it with the blood of a carpenter who was being crucified by the Romans, and gave it to a thief named Sirach.
In the book and in the movie, the first demon knight is Sirach. We know this because Breaker had multiple flashbacks of him, and Jeryline gets her own visions of him when she is turned into a demon knight. I want to create this story based on the timeline starting with the creation of the universe. In the book, it described how the keys were different shapes and sizes. One didn't look like the other. It started out before the beginning of time, Breaker said, but time had no beginning and can have no end. The keys in various forms were always there. Breaker also described how the demon, who is known as the salesman in the book, but is referred to as the collector in the movie, became powerful, and how this key was adapted in order to protect it. The salesman isn't dumb like the others. He amassed his intelligence of the old ones, the original demons, and was able to gather up 6 of the 7 keys. Then came the day he learned of the last one right here on earth. The keeper of the key at the time, a man named Sirach, was under attack by the salesman, and the same things we face just outside this door. Sirach found a way to protect the key. He carved a vial out of pure quartz and adapted the key so that it became part of it. He traveled by donkey or camel or who knows what to a small country under Roman control and filled the vial with the blood of a young heir to the throne of Israel as he was being crucified, as his blood dripped down the cross. This would have taken place between 200 to 175 BCE. Hold that thought. I will come back to that time frame later on in this video. In the movie, Breaker has his first flashback of Sirach. We see him with the adapted key running from the demons. He stops running and attempts to give the key to the demon that was chasing him. But the key is struck by lightning, creating the celestial tattoos on his hand and simultaneously making him the first demon knight. The second flashback he gets of Sirach is when they are attacked by the salesman's demons after he conjures them up from the ground out of his own demonic blood. We see Sirach is alone and holding the key. He realizes that the blood of Christ burns the hand of the demon, so he filled the vial of the key with the blood that was dripping down. I believe that these 2 short scenes of Sirach turned him into a believer. I say this because in the movie, Breaker says that the key was given to a thief named Sirach by God.
They gave it to a thief named Sirach.
And in the book, it's stated that he found a way to protect the key. My mini theory is that God created different ways to protect each key, and this just so happens to be the way to protect this key here on Earth. Moving on down the timeline, Breaker continues explaining the story. The guardians of the key through the centuries have refilled it with their own blood, but a trace of the original always remains. As the millennia passed, the salesman consolidated his power. You all might have noticed how down-home dumb the demons are, the ones outside this room right now. For this section of Breaker's story, I will only go by the dates that are given in the book because they don't align with the dates of the actual wars that are mentioned. Fast forward to the early 1800s. The man who was the keeper of the key, Harrison, was born in 1807. Breaker says, the man who passed the key to me was named Harrison. We were in France together, World War I. He filled it with his own blood as he lay dying in my arms. He transferred the celestial mark to my hand at the moment of death. Harrison, the man who passed the key to me, had been born in 1807. He was 110 years old when he was killed. Shot by a German, Willie suggested. Killed by the salesman, Breaker said, as were all the others before him. The book describes in detail the moment Breaker is with Harrison and how he passes the key to him. His mind jumped back to his own initiation into the club. It was a moment he wished had never happened. He had not asked for the key and the duties it entailed. He was just a private in the army trying to keep from getting his ass blown off. His commanding officer had been Lieutenant Stephen Harrison, who had found life in the military to be the best way to keep the salesman away, he had not known he would be shot in the trenches of World War I. He probably had not known who the next keeper of the key would be at all. But Silas Breaker had been there to watch him die. The assault had failed. It was summertime, but the fog was thick and cold. Harrison had caught a bullet just as he and Breaker dived into a shallow, unfinished trench. French flares were wafting down on their little parachutes, creating a fantastic moonscape of tattered trees and cratered earth. Breaker and Harrison were caught between the lines, doomed to wait for the next attack to jump up and rejoin their unit, or to die under the next hail of artillery fire. In that ungodly light, Harrison had taken the key out of its pouch and begun filling the orb with the blood that was bubbling out of the huge hole in his guts. As he did so, he told Breaker the history of the key, of a man in biblical times named Sirach, who made the orb and filled it with Christ's blood. As a last act, Harrison had pressed Breaker's palm against his. If Breaker had doubts about the story, he lost them in a hurry. Intense pain stabbed his hand. Green light shot between the creases of his skin. It was only when Harrison's strength was gone that his hand fell away at last, and Breaker had inherited the tattoo. On-the-job training followed swiftly. A huge, curious rustling grew over the battlefield. The flare swung and danced in the sky, pushed by a sudden, unnatural wind. Silhouetted against them were creatures with broad, flapping wings and bloated, hideous bodies the size of a very fat man. "You'd better run now," Harrison said. He pulled the pouch out of his uniform and put the key inside, then hooked it over Breaker's neck. "Run now and never stop." Those were his last words. Confused and terrified, Breaker had scrambled out of the hole as the creatures alighted and began to tear Harrison apart. One of them swooped down and fastened its claws into Breaker's back. A machine gun somewhere chattered. Then another. The winged demon fell away and began to flounder about with its wings in shreds. Artillery opened up on both sides. The war kicked back into full swing, and in the chaos, Breaker made it back to his own lines. What a happy ending. Breaker had never been so surprised to be alive. It was only later, during periods of depression as the years ground on, that he wished a bullet or bomb had ended his life that night. He had been 19 years old, the same age as so many millions of boys on both sides who died in a war that made no sense and only led to another. Now Breaker tapped his forehead with his fist, knocking the memories aside, memories he had rehashed thousands of times, but brought only grief with no solution. Even with the power of the key, he could not change the past, only the future. This is also the time frame when the demon gets his new name, The Salesman, by Harrison. To Breaker, it would be no surprise. Like any good salesman, you have to keep knocking on doors to find the right buyer. And maybe that was why Harrison, whose blood was running dry in the key, had dubbed the evil one just that, the salesman. The guy just never knew when to give up. For 2,000 years, he had tracked the last key of the 7, yet here he was in Wormwood with his bag of samples and his hearty handshake, knocking on doors. I just want to quickly mention that in the book, the lieutenant's name is Harrison, but in the movie, his name is changed to Dickerson. For the sake of storytelling, I'll keep the name as Harrison. In the movie, Breaker gives a short version of how he acquired the key on August 23rd, 1917.
They threw us right into a goddamn ambush. We gotta get out of here. There's no battles ahead. Sir, I don't understand. No, take it.
After that, he went on to live a normal life for the time being, until the salesman shows up whenever and wherever he was. Once in 1922, in a small town in Indiana, it had some kind of beyond the border name like Peru or Cairo or Brazil. He had come near to being lynched, had his hands tied behind his back, and was carried atop a galloping mob to a tree that had not seen a hanging in 60 years or so. The town constable had told him this was the same constable who put the noose around Breaker's neck and asked if it was comfy enough. How the man had laughed, how they all had laughed in their ignorance. Breaker had saved their hides, and all they had done to repay him was try to kill him. If not for the fact that he had hidden the key where it would not be found for centuries, perhaps thousands of years, the salesman would not have plunged into the crowd playing the part of a traveling minister full of righteous fervor and stopped the lynching like he did. And once again, even at such a young age, war veteran Silas Breaker set out on the road again, key in pouch, heart in throat, destination far away and unknown. This was no new and exciting adventure for him. His beginning days with the key, when he had felt heroic and special, were as dead and dry now as the dirt under the pyramids. He was old and tired. He owed nothing to anyone. He had labored and suffered, and the time had come to die, just to die. The book spoke about what he did right after the wars had ended. He lived in a home and he worked 2 jobs when the salesman shows up to one of them while he was working. He pretended to be an FBI agent and everything. Now, the book didn't verify what year it was. From Breaker's point of view, it was between 1994 and 1996. For the sake of storytelling, I'll just say that the year he ends up in Wormwood is 1995, especially since that's when the movie was released. In 1995, this is what the book mentions. He walked up the steps alone, thinking of these things without wanting to, tired to the point of collapse. The newest cat and mouse game with the salesman had started well over 8 days ago in New York, where Breaker had lived in a small Greenwich village flat on Bleecker Street, and worked 2 jobs to keep from starving or being rained on to death from lack of roof. The salesman had come to where Breaker worked the night shift, posed as an FBI agent to the shift boss, gotten Breaker hauled into the front office for a quick questioning session, and tried to handcuff him on the spot. Breaker had jumped the shift foreman to get his keys and escaped into the employee parking lot. The shift boss had a brand new Firebird convertible that had to cost $30,000 if it cost $1. And now the car was, of course, a pile of recycling material on New Mexico Highway 47, just outside of Wormwood. This is the opening scene of the movie, when the salesman or collector is chasing Breaker down the highway, and Breaker's car just so happened to be running out of gas. After pew-pewing at the salesman's engine, Breaker realizes he's locked inside the car, so he hops out of the window in order to escape the inevitable collision. The salesman rams his car into Breaker's, and the two cars explode. Breaker gets up and checks the stars on his hand. One moves into its spot in the formation. The explosion ends up momentarily unaliving the salesman, giving Breaker just enough time to run all the way to the Eureka Cafe. Now, that's the name of the cafe in the book, but in the movie, it's called the Halfway House Cafe. He tries to steal the cafe owner's car, whose name is Homer, who happens to be Danny's father. Danny alerts his parents, which sends Breaker running down the street to get away. He runs until he bumps into Uncle Willie, who happens to be looking for discarded alcohol. He asks him if he knows if there's a place for him to stay for the night. Uncle Willie mentions there's a place 2 miles away. Meanwhile, back at the crash scene, Deputy Bob and Sheriff Tupper are assessing what happened when the salesman comes back to life and walks out of the burning car holding his leather case.
Airbags, gotta love them. Did you see him?
While they question him, they get a call from dispatch, who is Mavis, telling them about someone trying to steal Homer's car. I love the way she says it too. Someone tried to steal his car. They decide to go to the cafe, and the salesman hitches a ride with them. Cutting back to Uncle Willie and Breaker walking up to the Mission Inn, Breaker checks his palm again and sees that the last star is moving into alignment.
Just the place I've been looking for.
This lets him know that this is where he needs to be. This is where the proverbial battle will take place. After he gets settled in, he has some supper, and Cordelia offers some dessert, if you know what I mean.
You hurry up and finish it. I'll take care of dessert.
Someone comes to the door, and it makes Breaker tense up, and that makes Irene suspicious of him. It turns out to only be Roach. He's here for a date with Cordelia. While those two create music in the air, the other guests get to know each other. Moments later, the salesman shows up with Deputy Bob and Sheriff Tupper. While they question Breaker, Mavis calls in and confirms that the cars Breaker and the salesman were driving have been reported as stolen, and that Breaker has been unalived now for at least 5 years.
By the minute, according to the computer, Frank Breaker died over 5 years ago. We're off to a pretty bad start.
Uncle Willie rats out where Breaker hid the key.
I know where it is. Damn, it just occurred to me. Hell, I watched him stash it. Didn't even know. No. I'm sorry, mister.
So the sheriff decides to take them both to the station, but the salesman ain't going.
Bob, would you escort Mr. Breaker, or whatever the hell his name is, out to the car? Sheriff, I have to say I am much obliged for your assistance in apprehending this. Don't bother. You're coming with us. See, both of those cars were stolen. So we are going down to the station, and we're going to sort this shit out.
Really, like the man said, if you knew who I was.
We'll find out soon enough.
After he frees his fist from Sheriff Tupper's head, he goes after Breaker, who managed to free himself from the handcuffs. Breaker grabs the key and presses it against the salesman's face. It glows red and burns his flesh. He jumps out of the nearest window, and then comes everyone's most nostalgic scene in the movie.
Humans! You're not worth the flesh you're printed on! Fuck this cowboy shit! You fucking hold up, well then there, motherfuckers! do is give me the goddamn key! And we could get on with our lives!
He condemns the property by slicing his palm open and throwing his demonic blood around. Demons start to form and rise up out of the ground in true horror film fashion, of course. And then they begin to attack and jump through windows. Breaker takes one out by pew-pewing it in the eyes. He quickly seals the front door entrance by pouring a drop of blood on the threshold. Jeryline and Irene rush to the back door and get attacked by a demon right when they open the door. Breaker pokes it in the head with his trusty pocket knife. He pushes the demon away from the door and he quickly seals it with a drop of blood. The demon runs at them to re-attack them, and it runs right through the seal, combusting into bits and pieces while doing so.
That is disgusting.
What the hell is that shit?
The demons get quiet right after, and this makes Roach believe that they have time to escape. Now pause. I want to quickly mention that in the book, Roach has tried to get them to leave the house multiple times. I must say, it was kind of annoying to have to read through, mainly because every single time they almost get killed, and Breaker, being the Heart of Gold protagonist, had always come to their rescue. In the movie, they tried to leave the house the first time through the front door, and Roach leaves Cordelia outside with the demon while he scurries back into the motel. Cordelia punches the demon in the face and then immediately apologizes like a true streetwalker without her pimp.
I'm sorry.
Wally comes to her rescue and gets knocked out in the process. The salesman bumps into the seal and asks Breaker for the key.
Need a hand? Give me the key, Breaker, for crying out loud.
As if it's some simple object to just hand over. Breaker uses a drop of blood to seal the window, and Irene asked him,
Breaker, what the hell are those things? Demons or something?
Worse.
Roach has a bitch fit about it.
Demons. Oh, that's sweet. That's just fucking sweet. And they want to kill us because of you? Well, who's gonna protect us? You? Deputy Bob? Or the Headless Horseman over there?
Breaker tells them that as long as they stay inside and stay together, they'll be all right. Roach threatens to give the key to the demon, and Breaker demonstrates his willingness to kill anyone in order to protect the key. He makes his way upstairs to seal off all of the rooms. When he sees the cross in the windows painting lights up by the lightning, he gets his first flashback. Jeryline interrupts him to see if he needed help. He apologizes about his actions earlier, and she states how she knew he wasn't going to do anything to her. The scene cuts to Cordelia, Roach, and Wally. The two lovebirds have a spat with each other. Breaker lets Irene know that he has sealed all the rooms upstairs and wants to seal any other entrances or exits in the motel. That's when the cat Cleo appears out of nowhere, and that stirs Breaker's obsession with finding out where she came from and if she's been possessed. This leads to them chasing the cat all the way to the basement.
Breaker, what are you doing?
Animals aren't immune. They can be possessed just like people. Give me the cat. Give me the cat. Yes. What's going on? The cat?
Breaker, please. My cat is not possessed by some demon from hell.
Let's see.
Cutting back to the Three Stooges, Roach and Wally have a mini argument about what happened earlier, and Roach is more concerned with leaving the house and giving the key to the demons outside. That's when Cordelia interjects and tells Roach,
Hey, Roach, haven't you caused us bad enough trouble?
Excuse me. I'm trying to have a conversation with my friend Wally here.
He's not your friend. Assholes don't have friends.
Excuse us. Can I talk to you for a second, please?
they have another row with each other. The scenes switch to Breaker and Jeryline looking for the cat. When they find her in the basement, Willie notices where she came from. The scenes switch back to Cordelia crying alone in her room in the dark when she hears the salesman's voice.
All you have to do is let me in. Let me in. Let me in. Let me in. Cordelia?
We cut back to everyone in the house discovering the mines down in the basement. All of a sudden, they hear Wally screaming upstairs and they all rushed to go see what all the fuss is about. They open the door to Cordelia's room and they realize that she's been possessed and she's attacking Wally. Cordelia raises Wally in the air as a body shield and, well, so much for saving him. Possessed Cordelia causes more commotion. Irene loses an arm and then Breaker was finally able to pew her eyes out. Shortly after, they attend to Irene's arm and decide to escape through the mines in the basement against Breaker's stance on staying inside, of course. So they all head down to the basement and watch as Roach breaks the cement wall with a sledgehammer. The sound of the sledgehammer against the cement wall gives Breaker another flashback of Sirach running from the demons. Breaker snaps back into reality once Roach breaks the wall down and they start walking through the mines while Breaker lags behind to seal the hole. As they are walking through the mines, Jeryline finds Danny curled up and crying on the ground. His parents emerge from the darkness of the mines, but they've been possessed and they are accompanied by the other demons from outside. Jeryline yells to alert the others that the demons are in the mines as well, and they all scramble to run back to the basement. Once they make it to the basement, Breaker lets them know that the hole is sealed and the demons can't get through.
Hey, Chief, don't worry. They can't get past the seal.
But Roach breaks the seal by pew-pewing Homer.
This is for 4 years of minimum wage, you asshole.
And pause. As I stated earlier, that Roach was way more annoying and dangerous in the book than he is in the movie. Anyways, they all make it upstairs where it's been sealed from their tussle with Cordelia earlier. Breaker checks to make sure that Danny isn't possessed. He asked Danny why he was in the mines. He asked about ammo and realizes that they are low on it. This is when Breaker has another flashback. Only this time it's about when he was in the war with Lieutenant Harrison and him becoming a demon knight.
They threw us right into a goddamn ambush. We gotta get out of here. Who wrote that Jose? Sorry, I don't understand. I'll take it.
Roach snaps him out of it by demanding to know how they were going to get out of there. He responds by saying that all they needed to do was to survive the night. That's when Irene co-signs what Roach is saying by asking for a deeper explanation of what is going on. That's when he decides to explain to them everything from the beginning of time. I've already included that in the very beginning of this video. What I would like to do is incorporate Breaker's explanation from the book. It started before the beginning of time, Breaker said, but time had no beginning and can have no end. The keys in various forms were always there. In the beginning, the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. The book of Genesis, Irene said, the formation of the earth. Uncle Willie was recovering marvelously, or so it looked. Let there be light, he said, wonderingly, and there was light. Back up a step, Breaker said. Before the light, before there was darkness, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with all kinds of creatures. Jeryline sat up straighter. Creatures like them? The ones out there? Worse than them, because they were smarter, he said to Jeryline. They had 7 keys formed into a circle that focused the power of the cosmos into their hands until God stepped from the darkness and created the universe. He scattered the demons and the keys. As the millennia passed, the salesman consolidated his power. You all might have noticed how down home dumb the demons are, like the ones outside this room right now. Here's the guts of it, Breaker went on, satisfied. The salesman isn't dumb like the others. He amassed his intelligence of the old ones, the original demons, and was able to gather up 6 of the 7 keys. Then came the day he learned of the last one right here on Earth. The keeper of the key at the time, a man named Sirach, was under attack by the salesman and the same things we faced just outside this door. Sirach found a way to protect the key. He carved a vial out of pure quartz and adapted the key so that it became part of it. He traveled by donkey or camel or who knows what to a small country under Roman control and filled the vial with the blood of a young heir to the throne of Israel. As he was being crucified, as his blood dripped down the cross, the guardians of the keys through the centuries had refilled it with their own blood, but a trace of the original always remains. The man who passed the key to me was named Harrison. We were in France together, World War I. He filled it with his own blood as he lay dying in my arms. He transferred the celestial mark to my hand at the moment of death.
Jeez, that would make you,
Breaker nodded slightly. There exists one benefit or side effect of being chosen, the keeper of the key. You get to live until the time comes to pass the key again. Harrison, the man who passed the key to me, had been born in 1807. He was 110 years old when he was killed. Shot by the German? Uncle Willie suggested. Killed by the salesman, Breaker said, as were all the others before him. Mr. Breaker, what happens if the salesman gets the last key? Will we be affected? Most likely, Breaker said. He might want things back the way they used to be. With the power of the 7 keys, he can undo all creation, and he'd probably start with Earth. This is where the last key has eluded him for so long. Again, he held his open hand to her. See the stars? Yeah, 7 stars in a nice little circle with a bunch of curlicues and designs inside it. That's the point, he said. When all 7 stars form a perfect circle, the salesman is just one step away from getting all 7 keys. If the salesman gets the key this time, there will be nothing left at all except the salesman and his friends. Whether you like it or not, what we do here on this night will either save the universe or doom it. So now we're fighting for the whole freaking universe in a 2-bit desert town nobody's ever heard of? That's just the way it happened to work out this time. Last time it was New York City. Before that, a 4-hut Eskimo camp in Alaska. Before that, long before that, I fought him in France. After the story, they realized that Danny is missing. They all scrambled to go find him. This gave Roach the perfect opportunity to steal the key out of Breaker's pouch. This also was a great opportunity to try and tempt the others individually. The first person he tempted was Jeryline. He is tempting her with what she really wants the most. In the book, it spoke about how she wanted to finish her work release program so that she could move to Paris and travel the world.
Where the hell are you? You're stuck in this house. You're stuck in this town. There's a great big world out there, Jeryline. You should travel. You can see it all. I can help you. You want Paris, Rome, Athens, you got it. Of course, if you don't help me, well, that's a whole other picture.
There is a big portrait of her on the wall that has something moving behind it. The portrait starts to bleed and then it falls down like a curtain, revealing what is behind it. It's Breaker's body being eaten by demons. In the book, it says that he was still alive while being eaten, but in the movie, he's clearly unalive. The salesman appears behind her. I'd like to take this moment to point out how almost every grown adult man in the book wanted Jeryline, even though she was too young for any of them. Now we'll skip over that part, just like we're going to skip over her spitting in his face because, girl, who raised you? Nasty. She walks out of the room looking traumatized and no one notices. Irene notices that Uncle Willie is MIA and she takes Bob with her to go look for him. They find the stairs that leads up to the steeple. They find Uncle Willie and Danny, and Irene tells Uncle Willie to take Danny downstairs and to go get Breaker in the key. Her and Bob stay behind and pilfer through Wally's mail bags. Uncle Willie looks for Breaker in one of the rooms that happens to be the moment the salesman uses to tempt him with booze and boobs. I hope I could say that word here on YouTube. I would like to include a couple of lines from the salesman saying what he says to Uncle Willie as Uncle Willie drinks the alcohol that he accepted. Wait till I tell you the one about the town drunk who finally took his last drink, the salesman said, suddenly serious. Suddenly, as grim as a surgeon stalking down a corridor with bad news for the family. Just wait until I do. The scene cuts back to Irene and Bob. They realize Wally had a lot of artillery and he was planning to take out the post office for Cordelia. The scene changes to Breaker and Jeryline looking for Uncle Willie in the room that Danny left him in. They find him possessed and they have a pretty lengthy struggle with him. Cut back to Bob and Irene when the salesman appears at the top of the stairs of the steeple, offering Irene her arm back. This is another classic moment from the movie when he asked,
Want your arm back, Irene? I can make it happen. Is that a yes?
No, that's me giving you the finger, asshole.
I'll be back.
We cut back to Uncle Willie giving Breaker a run for his money, and Jeryline couldn't bring herself to hurt Uncle Willie. Meanwhile, Roach is being a roach and offers the key to the salesman as a barter for him to be able to leave out of there unharmed. Meanwhile, even after getting bitch slapped across the room, Jeryline couldn't do anything to Uncle Willie. Like, girl, what is wrong with you? Snap out of it. Anyways, Breaker chops his head off with a sword. Thankfully, Danny was there and he pokes Uncle Willie's eyes out. Cutting back to Roach, we see he's still bartering with the salesman. He gets Roach to wipe off the blood seal. As he wipes it off, he asked for one last request from the salesman.
Listen, on a personal note, be sure and kill Breaker. He's a bossy asshole. Isn't he though?
He places the key into the leather case and walks downstairs. This is another nostalgic moment in the movie for me when Roach says, "To God with you" in Spanish. He doesn't realize that the salesman, or the demon, replies back to him in Spanish, "To hell with you."
And vaya con diablos to you too, sir.
Like, boy, you don't know you're about to get got. When Breaker hears the noise and sees what's going on, he retreats back into the room and the salesman walks upstairs. Bob and Irene emerge from the steeple and instruct the remaining three to head up there. Irene ends her life and Bob's life with her classic line. Now, pause. I just want to quickly rant about how unrealistic the explosion was. If there were something less powerful, like, I don't know, pipe bombs, then that would have been more believable. Not to mention, it wasn't just one grenade, it was like 6 of them. But anyways, I digress. So now it's only Danny, Jeryline, and Breaker left. Can I quickly mention that Danny is the most nonchalant kid I have ever seen? Or maybe he's just numb to all the things that have happened within that night. I don't know. I also want to point out that in the book, the salesman is always depicted as very powerful, and pretty much he can do anything and find any way to possess you or tempt you. There's something about the way he possesses Danny. It's so subtle and fitting for someone innocent in this proverbial battle. I appreciate the way they handled Danny in the movie as opposed to the way his character was possessed in the book. Breaker told Jeryline that there was only enough blood for one entrance, and she says, he walks over to her and drops the blood on her hand to check if she wasn't actually possessed. When he realizes she isn't, he offers her to take the key. That's when possessed Danny grabs his hand and asks, "Can I have it?" He hoists Breaker up by the torso and throws him, and he begins to shred Breaker's insides out. Jeryline gets slapped across the room again, and possessed Danny turns his attention back onto Breaker. Jeryline seizes this moment to kick him through the sealed window, causing him to combust. Breaker asked her for the key and begins filling it with his blood. He asked her for her hand, and he places the key in between their palms. She gets visions of the first demon knight and other demon knights before her. He explains to her what to do when the stars line up. As he dies, he tells her to watch her back. After he takes his last breath, all of the seals fade away from all of the windows and doorways. That's when the salesman comes up to the steeple. When she finally responds to him, she says,
You just stay where you are.
When she comes out from her hiding spot, she is covered in blood. When he grabs her hand, he gets shocked and she says, she makes her way down the steeple and starts tiptoeing around. When she gets to the bathroom, she notices that the shower curtain is gone. That's when the salesman sneaks up behind her and wraps it around her. He throws her into the tub and turns on the shower to wash off the blood. I loved how in the book it described her thinking to herself, what would Breaker do in a moment like this? And she used that poking his eye out moment to be a diversion for her to put the blood in her mouth and hold it in her mouth for the amount of time that she did, and then finally spitting it out on his face. I want to read what the book says about her reflection on spitting Breaker's blood out on his face. It would have been disappointing, she later on reflected, if he had simply melted like the Wicked Witch. It would have been disappointing if he had exploded like an overloaded boiler. It would have been disappointing if he had burst apart into 100 little demons with squeaky voices that bumbled about in terror and then ran away. Instead of those options, he chose the one that's most fitting his personality, the one that told her without doubt that he would be back soon and that he would be looking for her. Jeryline survived the night. Waking up on the floor, she heads back up to the steeple to Breaker's body to refill the key with his blood. In the next scene, we see her tucking the key under her jean jacket and she picks up her bags to board a bus. Before she takes a seat, she seals the bus entrance with a drop of blood. Smart girl. The bus takes off down the road and Jeryline looks at the stars on her hand. One star is already in its formation. The bus comes to a stop and we see a man in a business attire with a leather case, standing waiting to get picked up. He examines the seal on the entrance and declines to board. He watches the bus drive down the road. Fast forward to what the crypt keeper says about Jeryline.
You'll be happy to know, kiddies, that Jeryline lived happily ever after. In fact, I even got a ghost card from her. She's traveling the world and having a fabulous time.
Now, I want to share what the book says in the epilogue and in the author's final interlude. In the epilogue, it stated that she was at a bus station in Terre Haute, Indiana, 4 days after the battle at the Mission Inn. She had an aunt in Virginia who would let her stay in her home until she got back on her feet. It wasn't much of an offer, but the best Jeryline could drum up. Wormwood is, of course, a ghost town now and will be forever. The Mission Inn burned to the ground, leaving only unanswered questions for the authorities of New Mexico. They found 9 charbroiled skeletons, but could only identify 8. Wanda, Cordelia, Sheriff Tupper, Deputy Martell, Uncle Willie, Roach, Wally Enfield, and Danny Long. The 9th one, that of course Siler Breaker, had the coroner mystified. The bones, he said at the inquest, were those of a man almost 100 years old. No one could imagine who it might have been. The remains of Silas Breaker were quietly buried in a pauper's grave in Junction City, which was marked only with a small cement cross. In the meantime, Jeryline Bascom wanders from town to town, job to job, hiding from the law and the inevitable appearance of the next salesman. She does not know when the stars on her palm will shift again, but she knows they will, and on that day, she will face Breaker's fate as bravely as he did. In conclusion, this movie is so nostalgic to me because I used to watch it with my great aunt back in the day when I was a child. It makes me miss her so much. I love how this story puts biblical context into a more modern day perspective, meaning that it depicted a spiritual battle against evilness in the physical realm in horror film fashion, of course. I also love how the book described in detail how lonely it is to be one of God's chosen people, and how that path leads to a similar or inevitable fate. A lot of fans and content creators believe this movie should have had a sequel to it, but I disagree, and here's why. 1. In the book and the movie, we get 3 snippets of the path of a chosen one or a demon knight. And those snippets are comprised in another but much larger story based on the path of God's chosen one or demon knight. So in total, we get 4 stories in one. Number 2. Aside from what the movie showed us, how Jeryline's story begins as a demon knight, and what the book tells us as an update, we as viewers can imagine what her story would look like as a demon knight. I think that's what the writers wanted to do. Yes, it could have been its own lore, but that would take away from the mystery of it all. Plus, I would like to view it in the way Jeryline viewed the shooting star she saw the morning after the battle. Distantly, a touch of orange stretched across the sky. A nomad asteroid, she supposed, or the salesman going back to the center of the cosmos to regroup and make new plans. Or, she thought with a smile, it was Breaker's soul free at last, free to live, free to love, free to sleep from now until forever. 3. As an addition to the last point, the book already told us the beginning of her journey and how her journey would end. We just don't know the middle portion of that journey. And lastly, it's kind of like the Jeepers Creepers franchise. Jeepers Creepers 1 and Jeepers Creepers 2 were chef's kiss. But Jeepers Creepers 3 was a complete dumpster fire. So if they aren't going to do it in a way that makes sense, then they should leave it be. 4. I believe that if they are going to make another version of this story, then the salesman would have to come back bigger, badder, and better than the last one, because in the book, it did say that he consolidated his powers over the millennia. And I feel like he would have to do that again for the modern times that we are in right now. Now, with all of that said, this leads me to my next point of the video. The rules of a demon knight, the salesman, and the battle. And these aren't in any particular order. Number 1, as long as they stay inside and stay together, they would be safe. This was one of the simplest rules in the book and movie, but that seemed to always be a hard thing for them to do. Number 2, if you don't all get killed in there, you'll wind up like Cordelia. So I might as well be on hand to end it. Kill you when you belong to the salesman. You are my enemy. I pop you with a drop of blood, you die, and I live on to guard the key. This rule kind of explains why a keeper of the key would live on for so long without handing it over to anyone else. Breaker did express in the book how he failed at keeping other people safe or alive, mainly because they didn't want to listen to him, or they refused to fight without a good and or proper explanation. This explains why he was irritated or exhausted, if you will, when he was explaining the story from the beginning.
God damn it, I'm not making these rules up. And I didn't ask for this. All right? You want to know what's going on? Shall I tell you?
Hence why the next rule exists, and that is number 3. There exists one benefit or side effect of being chosen, the keeper of the key. You get to live until the time comes to pass the key again. As Breaker said in the book that the man who passed the key to him was 110 years old. If you care to know, by the time Breaker passes the key to Jeryline, he is 97 years old. But he still looks like he's middle-aged or younger. By the time he gets to Wormwood, New Mexico, Breaker is 97 years old. 1995 minus 1898 gives you 97. Number 4, with the power of the 7 keys, he can undo all creation. Number 5, when all 7 stars form a perfect circle, the salesman is just a step away from getting all 7 keys. Number 6, the 7 stars are aligned in a circle right now. At daybreak, they will switch out of alignment if I am still alive. I already explained in point number 2 why this has happened before. This is also why Breaker says to Jeryline as he's passing away that
When the stars line, you'll know what to do. I can't tell you how long. It may be a lifetime, maybe several. But on that day, you'll fight. And when that night is over, you'll do what I just did.
Number 7, when the salesman declares war on Breaker, it was always a declaration that spared no one around him. Number 8, this key only works for me, he said. To you, it's just another piece of metal, won't do a thing. This rule is kind of meh because in the book, he only trusted Jeryline with the key. On multiple occasions, he gave it to her to hold and to use without knowing if she was actually going to be a chosen one or not. So yeah, this rule is kind of muddy. My theory on the Demon Knights. Remember when I said I would talk about how the Demon Knights had the title of being a thief in the beginning of this video? Well, that's the next point in this video. Sirach was called a thief in the movie. The salesman referred to Breaker as a thief, and Breaker's behavior suggested that in both the book and in the movie. Like when he stole his shift foreman's car, Breaker had jumped the shift foreman to get his keys and escape into the employee parking lot. The shift boss had a brand new Firebird convertible that had to cost 30 grand if it cost $1. And when he tried to steal Homer's car, in the book, Jeryline had a long rap sheet. The name attached to her probation file identified her as Jeryline A. Bascom, 20-year-old white female with a record of many enterprising activities such as robbery, burglary, grand theft auto, and possession of controlled substances, to mention a few. In the movie, she told Breaker she was there for stealing. Now, I'm not saying that all of the Demon Knights were thieves, but it's a pattern I recognized. And One I thought was worth mentioning. In biblical times, stealing and being a thief is frowned upon, hence the 10 Commandments. Even today in modern times, this is still frowned upon, especially in religious or spiritual groups. I would like my AI to tell you all the characteristics of a thief. Ayo. Can you give me the good and bad characteristics of a thief?
That's an interesting question. Let's look at it from a character trait and human behavior perspective, rather than condoning theft. Good characteristics in terms of skills or qualities, cleverness and resourcefulness. Thieves often have to be quick thinkers, creative, and adaptive to changing situations. Observant. They pay attention to details, notice patterns, and spot opportunities. Cunning. Many thieves are skilled at strategy and planning, able to anticipate obstacles. Dexterity. They might be agile or have quick hands, which can be impressive in itself. Bravery or boldness. It often takes nerve to attempt risky actions, though this is misapplied in the context of crime. Bad characteristics in terms of ethics and negative traits. Dishonesty. A thief operates through deception or lies, betraying trust. Disrespect for others. Stealing shows a disregard for other people's rights, feelings, or property. Selfishness. Thieves put their own wants above the well-being of others. Lack of integrity. Their actions often go against moral or societal standards. Impulsiveness. Sometimes, theft is the result of poor impulse control or short-sightedness. It's important to remember that while certain traits, like cleverness or observation, can be positive in themselves, what matters is how someone chooses to use them. Someone with thief-like qualities or behaving like a thief in the night can make positive contributions if they apply those skills ethically.
We see all of those good character traits in Breaker. There were moments in the book when he wanted to leave the group to their own devices, especially every time they tried to escape the house and ended up getting attacked by the demons outside. He would always come to their rescue. Aside from that, everything a demon knight does has a grander purpose, and that is to keep the key safe and out of the salesman's hands by any means necessary, even if it means to steal, cheat, lie, kill, etc., etc. In the book, he stated that bad times can bring two things out of people. He replied, their natural goodness or their natural badness. Jeryline possessed the same good character traits, even with a long rap sheet. In the movie, she was the only one who tried to be helpful to Breaker. She tended to Irene's arm after it was ripped off, even though Irene was a total pain in her backside. She took care of Danny and tried to keep him safe for as long as she could. She also resisted temptation from the demon, or should I say the salesman, twice, in her room and in the end when he was dancing with her. Also, my theory on why the first demon knight was Sirach. But first, I'll let my AI tell you all about who Sirach was in the Bible. Ayo. Can you tell me what the Bible says about Sirach?
Sure. The Book of Sirach, also known as Ecclesiasticus, is part of the collection known as the Deuterocanonical Books. It was written by Ben Sirach around the early 2nd century BC. Sirach contains teachings on ethics, wisdom, and proper behavior, very much in the tradition of Proverbs and other wisdom literature in the Bible. However, not all Christian traditions include Sirach in their Bibles. Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches, Sirach is included in the Old Testament and is considered canonical scripture. It is valued for its practical advice and moral teachings. Protestant Bible Sirach is usually not included in the canonical Old Testament. It may appear in a separate section called the Apocrypha, which contains books considered useful or inspiring but not viewed as scripture by most Protestant denominations. Jewish tradition. Sirach was originally written in Hebrew, but it was largely preserved in Greek. Over time, it was not included in the authoritative Jewish scriptures, the Tanakh. Within the Catholic and Orthodox canons, Sirach is seen as a book of wisdom with a focus on living a righteous life, honoring parents, generosity, humility, and worship. It does not appear in references elsewhere within the traditional Protestant or Jewish Old Testament, but its influence can be seen in the teachings and values of Christian traditions that do regard it as scripture. Sirach, also known as Ben Sirach or Yeshua Ben Sirach, was a Jewish scribe and sage who lived in Jerusalem around the early 2nd century BC, most likely sometime between 200 and 175 BC. He is best known as the author of the Book of Sirach, Ecclesiasticus. Who was Sirach? Sirach was a learned teacher, well-versed in Jewish law, traditions, and wisdom literature. He ran a school for Jewish youths in Jerusalem and taught about the importance of living morally, following the law, and honoring tradition. His grandson later translated his writings from Hebrew into Greek and added a foreword, making the work accessible to Jews of the diaspora. What was he known for? Sirach is celebrated for compiling the Book of Sirach, a substantial collection of wise sayings, instructions, and hymns. His writings offer practical advice about everyday conduct, the fear of God, respect for elders, friendship, humility, generosity, and faithfulness to the Torah. He emphasized the importance of family, community, worship, and the pursuit of wisdom. Sirach's work reflects both deep religious faith and respect for Jewish tradition in a time when Hellenistic culture was influencing Jewish life. Sirach's book became an important source of ethical teaching among Jews and, later, among Christians, especially in Catholic and Orthodox traditions.
This movie makes this all seem like a moral and ethical test, or if you're spiritual, you can call it a simulation, if you will. The chosen ones are being tested, as well as the ones who will follow in their footsteps. This brings me to my next point of this analysis. Numbers. Number 7.
When I came here tonight, I thought you would be safe. I mean, there are only 5 of you. They need 7. And then he came with Bob and the sheriff. It's like tumblers in a lock. Everything has to line up. 7 stars, 7 people. Yeah.
Ayo. Can you tell me what the number 7 symbolizes in the Bible?
Absolutely. In the Bible, the number 7 is highly symbolic and represents completeness, perfection, and divine order. It appears frequently throughout both the Old and New Testaments. Here are a few key examples of its significance. 1. Creation. The world was created in 6 days, and on the 7th day, God rested. Genesis chapter 2 verse 2-3. This established a 7-day week and made the 7th day, the Sabbath, holy. 2. Covenant and oaths. The word for 7 in Hebrew, Shiva, is related to the word for oath, suggesting a sense of completeness or fulfillment. 3. Rituals and worship. Many rituals involve 7 elements, or were done in cycles of 7, such as 7 days of feasts or 7 sprinklings of blood and sacrifices. 4. Book of Revelation. The number 7 is used extensively, for example, 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 spirits, indicating divine completeness and fulfillment of prophecy. Overall, in biblical context, 7 is a symbol of God's perfect work, holy completion, and spiritual perfection.
The number 7 was the obvious number in this movie. In the book and in the movie, it represented many things like the 7 deadly sins. These sins are worldly representations of temptation or seduction, along with many other things. I'll start with listing the characters under the sin that they represent. Pride. Considered the root of all other sins, pride is an excessive belief in one's abilities or looks, often leading one to put themselves above others, including God. Roach, whenever he felt like not listening to Breaker and
Hey, handsome. Age before beauty. Yeah, pro before swine.
My favorite example of this is when it comes to Roach and how he tried to barter with the salesman in the book and how he eventually was unalived by the salesman. His unaliving was like sweet justice. Now, the next person that goes under pride is Deputy Bob. One example of this is when Bob demanded Breaker to hand over the key to him when they were outside looking for the other pistol. And this example comes from the book. I'm the boss here, he growled. I run this show. Hand it over, Breaker. I am an official of the county and the court. In general, Bob was like this the entirety of the book. Envy. This is jealousy towards another person's happiness, success, or possessions, often wishing that you had what they have or that they would lose it. The person that represents this is Wally. In the book, Wally's secret love for Cordelia made him envious of the men she slept with, including Roach. Deputy Bob. In the first chapter, it spoke about how he envied the sheriff and how he felt like he should be the one who is the boss in charge. Wrath, also known as anger. This is intense or uncontrolled feelings of hatred, rage or revenge toward others. Deputy Bob, in the first chapter, when it stated why he enlisted in the army, he had joined the force 4 years ago after an uneventful stint in the army, into which he had enlisted with the hope of shooting Krauts or Gooks or Iranians or who the hell ever Uncle Sam didn't like at the time. Wally. He was gonna go postal for Cordelia, which made no sense, but okay. Sloth. Not just laziness. Sloth is an absence of interest or habitual disinclination to exertion, especially when it comes to spiritual or moral duties. Roach. When he insists on giving the key to the demon, and when he left Cordelia to fend for herself outside. Wally. Him getting fired from his jobs and him pretending to not know why he was fired. Greed. Greed is an intense and selfish desire for wealth, power, or possessions for more than is needed. Irene. In the book, she was referred to as cheap and cunning, and she didn't hide her greed very well. Roach. In the book, he wanted money, he wanted a Chevy Corvette, and he wanted to be able to leave with Jeryline. The salesman conjured up the car, but it was up in the air above his head, and the salesman made the car crash down on him, and that's how he was unalived in the book. Lust. This is intense or uncontrolled desires, usually referring to excessive or inappropriate sexual cravings, but can also mean a strong desire in general. Cordelia. In the book, it explained why she became a prostitute. Over the years, she had fallen for a dozen guys, hoped beyond hope that they would love her in return, and put an end to her humiliating career with a vow of marriage. Roach was only the latest in a string of broken dreams. They called Cordelia a WHORE so much in the book that while I was recording the audio, I found myself calling her Hordelia. Anyways, Wally lusted after Cordelia. The book never explained why he loves her. We just know that he does because he thinks she's beautiful. Gluttony. Overindulgence and overconsumption, especially of food and drink, but can also apply to anything that is done to excess. Uncle Willie. In the book, it expressed how much he loved alcohol, so much so that in the beginning of the book and the movie, when Breaker bumps into him, he is pilfering through garbage in order to find discarded alcohol. Notice how I didn't include Jeryline because she did most of her havoc wreaking while she was a minor. But since she is a part of the group, you can place her under gluttony because she loved cigarettes, alcohol, controlled substances, and you can put her under greed for the Grand Theft Auto, and you can maybe even put her under sloth because in the book it described how she didn't want to do anything but move to Paris and travel the world. This brings me to my next segment. Everything isn't simple. At the same time, everything isn't complex. However, I do believe that there is always a deeper meaning than what's on the surface. We are unable to hold in emotions or harbor strong ones like anger. We are destined to shine them outward just as the sun casts out its light on us. We were also not created to emulate the same hue, shade, tint, or vibrant form of light. Some of us have dark or dim lights, and others are so vibrant that they resemble a hue of white or pure light. This is about taking a deep dive into colors and relating them to relationship dynamics, moods, and personalities, while also showing how their association can evoke emotions. Colors. What I want to quickly mention about the color white is that it is a color that represents purity, and that is how every grown man in the book, including the salesman, views Jeryline, because she is a minor and she's never been anywhere or with anyone, if you catch what I'm throwing at you. And isn't it kind of strange how the villain feels entitled to the virgin or the good girl, especially being that he's a demon of all things? Like, wow. Now, I want to read to you what the color red symbolizes. The color red symbolizes power, control, authority, and sacrifice. Hence the term bloodshed and the phrase blood, sweat, tears. Symbolism and meaning of red. Red stands for many things, all of them potent. Red is romantic, love, and its physical passion. Red is violence, anger, and aggression, and it frequently indicates danger. Paradoxically, for a color associated with action and energy, red is universally used as the color that means stop. Red is used professionally to capture attention, elicit emotion, and convey confidence. Negative associations, just as blood can be associated with either its life-giving properties or life-taking abilities. With violence, red is also paradoxically affiliated with notions of violence, danger, and anger. Red can indicate anger beyond what reason can contain. Seeing red and red flags indicate, or should, when something's wrong with a person or a situation. It also represents the root chakra. For this movie, the color red symbolizes things that differ from personality, and these things are what I like to consider as a little bit of blood magic. Now, what this blood magic could do for the characters of this movie is protection, oneness, worthy, safety, and lineage. We all possess light and dark. Even though Christ died for our sins, it's in the choices we make, or whichever one we choose to act on, is what will give us eternal life or condemn us for all eternity. Or at least that is what is suggested subtly in this movie. It showed us what happens when you sabotage, give in, or fail the test, if you will. We also witness the sacrifices and the initiation, an unbeknownst pledge or blood oath that leads to and creates a legacy. In the book, Jeryline asked Breaker to just give the salesman the key, but he refused. So you mean that you could toss the key away and forget all about it? He nodded. So why not just get rid of it then? Get out of all this craziness. Forget it ever happened. Could you? I could, he said, but I can't. She raised an eyebrow. Would the salesman leave you alone then? He nodded. So do it. Give him the damn thing. He frowned. He lowered his head and was silent for a moment. Breaker looked up, then held his right palm out for her to see. I know, she said. You've got a strange tattoo. So? He eyed her fiercely. Blowing your stack won't change things, Miss Jeryline. If the salesman gets the key this time, there will be nothing left at all, except the salesman and his friends. Whether you like it or not, what we do here on this night will either save the universe or doom it. Lastly, I want my AI to tell you about the power of the blood of Christ. Io, can you give me the Bible scriptures that talk about how the blood of Christ was used against evil?
Absolutely. I can share some Bible scriptures that highlight how the blood of Christ is powerful against evil and is central to Christian faith for overcoming sin, death, and spiritual opposition. Here are key verses about the blood of Christ and its power. 1. Revelation 12:11, NIV. They triumphed over him, Satan, by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. This verse directly shows that believers overcome the enemy by the blood of Jesus, the Lamb, and their testimony. 2. Colossians 1:13-14 NIV. For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness, and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. Here, redemption refers to the work of Christ, his sacrifice and blood, rescuing us from evil's power. 3. Hebrews 9:14 NIV. How much more, then, will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself unblemished to God, cleanse our consciences from acts that lead to death, so that we may serve the living God. The blood of Christ purifies believers, freeing them from sin's hold. 4. Ephesians 1:7 NIV. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins, in accordance with the riches of God's grace. The blood is the means by which sins are forgiven, and evil is defeated. 5. 1 John chapter 1 verse 7 NIV. But if we walk in the light, as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his Son, purifies us from all sin. Here again, the cleansing, purifying effect of Christ's blood liberates from sin. 6. Hebrews 2:14 NIV. Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil. His death, shedding of blood, destroyed the devil's power. Summary: the blood of Jesus is described as overcoming Satan, redeeming from sin, cleansing from unrighteousness, and breaking the enemy's power. Revelation chapter 12 verse 11 is especially direct about its use in spiritual victory.
Now, my next segment of this video, sacred geometry. This section is about unifying hidden knowledge, meaning, and symbolism with life and sacred geometry. Hidden knowledge, in the context of geometry, often refers to the concept of sacred geometry, where the shapes and patterns found in nature and ancient structures are believed to hold deep mystical meanings, revealing underlying principles of the universe that are not readily apparent at first glance, often associated with spiritual or philosophical insights beyond just the mathematical properties of shapes. The sacred geometry or shape that is hidden in this movie is the circle. A circle is universally recognized as a symbol of unity, infinity, wholeness, perfection, and the cycle of life, due to its continuous nature with no beginning or end, often representing the interconnectedness of all things and the eternal flow of time across various cultures and spiritual traditions. It can also symbolize the cosmos, the sun, or the divine, depending on the context. The circle is a universal symbol with many meanings. In this movie, the circle's symbolic meaning is unity, infinity, cycles, oneness, endless time, eternal and internal nature, connection and belonging, protection, and the cosmos. The last thing I want to quickly point out about sacred geometry is that the book hinted at how the key is a 4D object existing in the third dimension. It started out before the beginning of time, Breaker said, but time had no beginning and can have no end. The keys in various forms were always there. The next couple of lines seems to contradict this when it says, the key could be dated back to biblical times. This much he knew. Of the rest, he knew little, so little as to amount to nothing. What this really means is that no one knows anything about the keys before Sirach became a demon knight. Regardless of that, these last couple of lines explains in simple terms how it's a 4D object and why it had eluded the salesman for so long. The physical universe consists of 4 known dimensions: length, width, breadth, and time. To boil it down past the basics, all of reality conforms to those requirements. The key is a physical object, and its 4th dimension is time. Even the salesman must act within that framework. Basically, this key is traveling on its own timeline that puts it in the right place at the right time, in the right hands, with the right person. The time seems to reset when it is handed down to the next demon knight. Hence why the seals on the entrances and exits disappear right after Breaker dies from his injury by Danny the demon child. To conclude this segment, I want to include a snippet from a video I found that summarizes this to a T. I will put a link to this video in the description box down below. Make sure you go check out the full video because it's very informative and it talks about the 4D and how the 4D affects us in our current or modern time, if you will.
So, what does all of this mean? Well, what it means is that every single decision you've ever made, everything you've ever been, everything that you are, and everything that you ever will be exists all at the same time on a higher dimension, and that your life is being constructed in a higher dimensional way that we don't fully understand. Have you ever felt like something in your life happened for a reason, or maybe ever heard that one day you'll look back and realize that you were exactly where you needed to be, doing exactly what you needed to do, even if it didn't feel like it? Well, this could be why. Space-time just isn't as simple as one thing happens, then the next, and then the next. Our lives are constructed in ways that we can't fully understand as human beings. So that could mean that your life and our world is so much more intricate and beautiful and complex than we can even comprehend with our brains. And modern day physics says it's not only possible, but probable. So take this information with a grain of salt. I want you to come to your own conclusions about the universe, but just keep this in the back of your mind.
Now, my next segment is quick biblical references that are made in the movie, like the term wormwood, the story about the keeper of the keys, and etc., etc. Ayo, can you tell me what the Bible says about the term wormwood?
The term wormwood does appear in the Bible, particularly in the book of Revelation. Wormwood in the Bible. Revelation 8:10-11 NIV. The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers, and on the springs of water. The name of the star is wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. In biblical context, wormwood refers to a star or event that causes bitterness or disaster, and is often interpreted as a symbol of judgment or calamity.
Can you tell me the biblical story about the keeper of the keys?
Of course, the phrase keeper of the keys isn't a direct title used in the Bible, but it's often associated with St. Peter based on a well-known passage in the New Testament. The story of the keys and Peter. In the Gospel of Matthew chapter 16 verses 18-19, Jesus is speaking to Simon Peter and says, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." In this passage, Jesus is symbolically giving Peter the keys of the kingdom of heaven, implying a special authority or custodianship, especially regarding spiritual matters and leadership among the early Christians. Over time, this has led to the popular portrayal of Peter as the keeper of the keys, humorously imagined as standing at the gates of heaven, deciding who can enter. Interpretation. In Christian tradition, the keys represent authority, particularly the responsibility to guide and shepherd the followers of Jesus. The phrase also signifies the power of binding and loosing, regulating church discipline, doctrine, and forgiveness. So while the term keeper of the keys isn't a direct biblical title, it draws from this important moment between Jesus and Peter, and is a central theme in Christian art and tradition. The power of binding and loosing is a significant concept in Christian tradition and theology, rooted in Jesus' words to Peter, Matthew chapter 16 verse 19, and later mentioned in relation to all the disciples, Matthew chapter 18 verse 18. What does binding and loosing mean? 1. Historical context. In the Jewish religious tradition of Jesus' time, to bind and to loose were common expressions. They referred to the authority of teachers and rabbis to declare what was permitted, loosed, or forbidden, bound according to the law. This authority included decisions on religious, ethical, and sometimes legal matters. 2. Jesus' promise to Peter. When Jesus says to Peter, "Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven," he is giving Peter authority to make decisions about spiritual and moral issues, guiding the early Christian community. It is seen as granting responsibility to lead, teach, and make judgments in Jesus' name. 3. Applied to all disciples. In Matthew chapter 18 verse 18, Jesus extends this authority to all disciples. "Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." 4. In practice, church discipline. Early Christians understood this as the authority to discipline members, to forgive sins, or to restore someone to the community. See 1 Corinthians 5. Doctrine and teachings. It includes the responsibility to interpret Jesus' teachings and apply them to new situations. Forgiveness of sins. In John chapter 20 verse 23, Jesus tells the apostles, "If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." Symbolism. The keys and the authority to bind and loose are symbols of spiritual leadership, guidance, and the church's responsibility to foster right living according to God's will. Different Christian interpretations. Roman Catholics see the passage as the basis for the authority of the Pope, as Peter's successor, and church leadership. Protestants, and others, generally understand this authority as being given to the wider church or all believers, not just one individual or office.
Can you tell me what the Bible says about God marking his chosen people on their hands or foreheads?
Great question. In the Bible, the idea of God marking his chosen people on their hands or foreheads appears in several places, often symbolizing dedication, protection, or belonging to God. Here are some notable biblical references. 1. Old Testament Deuteronomy and Exodus, In Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 6-8, and Exodus chapter 13 verse 9, God commands the Israelites to keep his commandments always in their hearts, saying, "Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads." This was meant as a metaphor for keeping God's law at the forefront of their lives. Though some Jewish traditions later adopted physical reminders, like tefillin, small boxes with scripture bound to the arm and forehead during prayer. 2. Ezekiel 9:4, In a vision, God instructs an angel to put a mark on the foreheads of the people in Jerusalem who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it. Those marked were to be spared from judgment. 3. New Testament Revelation, Revelation chapter 7 verse 3 and 9. 4 mention the seal of God on the foreheads of his servants, protecting and identifying them as belonging to God during times of judgment. Revelation chapter 14 verse 1 describes the Lamb, Jesus, standing on Mount Zion with 144,000 people who have his Father's name written on their foreheads. What does this mean? The symbolism points to God's relationship with his people. The mark on the hand or forehead represents identity, allegiance, and belonging. In contrast, Revelation also mentions the mark of the beast on hands or foreheads as a sign of allegiance to evil, emphasizing the choice of whom to serve. Summary. The Bible uses imagery of marks or seals on hands or foreheads to demonstrate who belongs to God, emphasizing faithfulness, obedience, and protection.
Well, this is where I leave it for now. I hope you enjoyed this analysis video. All of my shameless plugs like my music, my podcast, my website, and my other channel will be in the description box down below, as well as all of my social media handles. Tell me what you think about this video. Also, you can suggest any other movie or TV show you would want me to do in the next breakdown. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with anyone you think would find this interesting. I will catch you all in the next video. But until then, put a shield on it and peace and love. Bye everyone.